I went up the west way this time, I went the east way last time. Took you to camp, but
That's a beautiful spot to get.
it's a gorgeous spot for camp.
When do you go back and get him?
Friday. Wanna go for a road trip?
Let me think about it. No,
No, he's gonna be cooking for the fair.
you won't cook for 350 people.
No, I think I'll go to Flathead, sorry. If I had my druthers.
I'm sure you could help. I hear I have volunteers.
Do you?
Could
Not
join
me.
4-H.
I could, I did that once, long time ago.
I bet they still let you help even if you aren't 4-H.
They've even changed the pledge since I was a freshman. We have to.
I didn't know they had a pledge.
Oh, pledge
It's
my
very
head.
long.
Yes.
And it's longer than
I
it used to be.
Oh my gosh, I've not done it for 30 years, but I pledged my heart. My heart.
My head, my heart, my hands, and my feet.
Yeah, I don't know, it's like, yeah, if you have
I
one, this
read
is-
somewhere, and I know how few people can say the Pledge of Allegiance unless they're in a crowd.
Well, we'll see here in a minute.
Just to sit by yourself. Kind of like the Lord's Prayer thing.
You should hear my 4-year-old.
I forgot my glasses.
Right there.
At least it doesn't take a knee.
You just provide.
How are you?
Really? And you?
Out here?
That's right. I took pictures looking at
I know, that's what you said. You still don't want to sit with you?
No.
Oh my gosh, I can't. It's not working anymore. Like built up into tomorrow, it's too years.
And donuts.
That's good.
Get a bigger crowd with donuts.
I have to work a lot of time to sit next to them.
Okay.
Coffee is not working.
Okay.
Coffee apparently doesn't work.
Your keys, they're under the. I did, I'm sure someone. See what I figured
I don't know if I remember the in the jar.
My mom told me to do the same thing.
I just did it today because they don't want to.
They had some wine.
Yeah.
Wanted to
Stop by and later with me.
remember. Not a joke.
Getting into this bungee group a little bit.
I haven't quite yet.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll open up with public comment. Is there public comment? Bobby?
As mentioned last week by Commissioner Delger, there was going to be an agenda item or a post for public notice on the special counsel, authorization for special counsel. I don't see it on the agenda, and I also don't see it on a notice.
You know, Corey can address that if he would, please.
Yeah, I was asked to come down and briefly address that. So the Attorney General has appointed Marty Lambert, who's the Gallatin County Attorney, as a Special Assistant Attorney General to address only the issues that I would be conflicted from, and issues specifically addressing any allegations of official misconduct. So that is where we're at. So that means that, you know, any cases related to that, I certainly couldn't comment on or be involved in. So that's about the extent of what I'm happy to provide at this point.
Okay, was there, how were we notified of that?
I received a letter, the letter that Mr. Lambert received, he sent me a copy of it, scanned and emailed, and asked me to provide it to the commissioners, and I provided it. I don't remember the exact time. I'm gonna guess end of the day Wednesday or possibly Thursday.
Okay, is the public able to have a copy of that?
I will ask Mr. Lambert. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I think it may be a public document, but I would rather someone else answer that question.
Okay. And then I have another question. So on July 8th, there was a trust board closed door meeting. On the agenda, it just said personnel. I'd like to know the reasons that that meeting was closed to the public. The public has the right to know.
It was just basically a meeting between the trust board and commissioners on some policies and some actions that had been taken.
And what made that not open to the public?
It was just some things that we didn't feel were needed to be in the open.
Was the preliminary budget discussed?
No, I don't believe so.
Were there contracts
Some
discussed?
of their budget issue was discussed, cause they had transferred the entire amount of their money into their budget so if you just leave $800,000 in there to spend, you can spend it.
Okay,
So and the reason that we kinda did, we wanted to restrict that to a certain amount, so the whole fund wasn't open.
okay, so according to NCA, the reasons to have a closed door meeting is for right of privacy to an employee, as well as litigation strategy. Was either one of those reasons? I mean, is there a threat of litigation between the county and the trust board?
No, there's no litigation between the county and the trust board.
Is there, so what was the reason for closing that meeting?
I think we just wanted to have a more open discussion. It probably really should have been a working meeting.
So it should have been a public
I
meeting,
would think so.
right? So does the public have the right to know what happened in that meeting? Is there minutes to show?
I don't know that did we take minutes or we just pretty much,
We're required to have minutes of all closed doors.
yeah, I don't know if we advertised the closing meeting, we're really not allowed to open those without it. I think you have to give them to the, Corey has a file and you have to have a district court order to open them up.
But since it should have been a public meeting to begin with, an open door meeting, should that not have been?
I would leave that to the legal people.
Oh, what legal people?
Or Corey, I would assume.
Corey, should that have been a public meeting or a closed door meeting?
So at the beginning of the closed door portion of it, so it was announced to be closed specifically by the commission for some issues that to be addressed. At the beginning of the closed door meeting, at least one of the members of the trust board asked, why is this closed door meeting, it should be open, and there was advice, well, no, there is an issue we need to address. There was one personnel issue I think is appropriately a closed door deal that was discussed at the outset, and I would, all right, let me put it this way. I think if the chairman were to say that needed to be discussed closed door, I don't think that anyone would probably disagree or say that was an error. I think the conversation probably did go into some things that, like Commissioner Delger said, that were more of working issues. So the question is how to address that, and I can certainly look at it and figure that out. I don't know if there were minutes taken.
Was it recorded?
I don't know.
Was it recorded?
No,
It was not.
we don't record closed door.
Okay, so we had a closed door meeting that should have been a portion of it with a small amount of it being closed door. But the public has no idea what their right to know information was during that meeting.
And mostly the discussion would revolve around the budget issue of whether or not to put the whole $800,000 into the budget or just to put $150,000 in the budget with the remainder to be allowed to be drawn on.
So you're confirming though that it should have been a working meeting? An open door
Probably, yes.
meeting? Thank you. That's all of my questions.
Okay, thank you.
But I think with an exception, that there was a portion that I think would properly be considered a closed door personnel issue.
Okay, so one item off of the entire thing.
And I don't know if commissioners, you guys want me to work to reconstruct some minutes from that meeting? I can try to do that with either you or the other participants.
Yeah, we could probably try to work through that.
Okay.
And then you'll get those to me or to the public?
Well, it would need to be minutes brought to both organizations to approve the minutes.
Okay,
So I'll work on that.
thank you. I'm sorry, you're also gonna find out if that letter can be made public from the Attorney General's
I'll ask
office?
Mr. Lambert.
Okay.
Any other public comment? Yes, Dwayne?
This Dwayne Hall. This speaker system that been asked for, what's going on with that?
The what?
The speaker system, because we can't hear you.
So I'll answer that. So I actually talked to a contractor last week. He's supposed to come down and do a evaluation of the room and make a recommendation of what we can do and give us a cost on that. So
Wasn't there a $5,000 allocated for it a couple of years ago?
I don't know anything about that.
Not that I'm aware of.
Not since I've been here either.
In what place? In this room?
No, upstairs. In the courthouse, or in the courtroom.
Oh, in courtroom. Before I became county attorney, they had put in a system. Is Val here? Val can tell us. Before I was here.
We actually have two systems in the courtroom. One was bought by the Missouri Drug Task Force with their money, and the other was provided by the Supreme Court. The one that is the Supreme Court is actually a standalone unit that can be moved from place to place. And that's the one we use right now.
Thank you, Val.
I guess I would add to that, I have received notice from the DUI task force that they're willing to fund a new television for displaying videos and photos during trials. I just haven't completed that, but that would be just for display of those things. It wouldn't necessarily address like, hearing witnesses or judges or whatever through their microphones. It wouldn't address that part of it.
Tim?
Jim Ravendall, citizen, been following this for quite a while, and I did talk to Commissioner Folkberg a little bit about this. Just for clarification, the question just raised, that was addressed when the commissioners were meeting in this room, just across the hallway, in that meeting room of the commission, putting in a sound, video, audio system. There was a local citizen that came in and gave a presentation to the commission at that particular time. Time goes by pretty fast. I'm not sure exactly how long ago that was. I'm gonna say, to be safe, I'm gonna say at least 5 years ago. That did get put on the table for consideration. Never did go any further. There was a cost presented to the commission at that time. And then I did talk to, again, Mr. Folkberg about trying to get that local resurrected. So I'm not sure if that's who's coming in next week or if it's a new person.
It's gonna be somebody new. I mean, I
Anyway,
don't know what happened in the past. I think it's best for me just to start now.
Starting from scratch
and move
from now
forward, yep.
would be good, because we're in a different room with the system anyway. So it will be great to be able to do that. I'm doing the best I can to help get that information out and people can hear it. So thank you, and that's where my input is on that.
Thank you. Any further comments?
I guess I have one question for Val. I know in my department, certain things are bought by different grants and they can only be used by that grant. So if her system was bought by the Supreme Court, it may only be able to be used for that purpose and not be able to be transferred down here. So that's something you may have to look at.
Any other public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead. Here we got minutes from July 15th and July 22nd.
I will move to approve both sets of minutes as presented.
Motion's been made and second to approve minutes from July 15th and July 22nd. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, Shirley Wilson, can we ask why minutes are so old to be approved? Because it's very difficult to know what's happening when they're published in the paper if they're 2 to 3 weeks old. Can we know why they're that old? Before publishing or before approval?
We send them to the paper, that's as far as,
But you just approved mid-June,
no, these are July.
or, I mean, mid-July.
July
That's 2 weeks ago.
15th was 2 weeks ago because we had some corrections on them from last week.
Okay,
The one on the 22nd is just from last Monday.
I know, but that wasn't the only one.
I have a letter here from DEQ for the Western Sugar Cooperative for water quality for Billings facility, water waste digest. DEQ Waste and Underground Tank Management Bureau verification of address. See claims in the amount of $79,204.94.
I'll move to approve the claims and set them out.
And I will second the motion to pay the approved claims in the said amount.
Motion been made and seconded to approve the claims and set them out. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries. Another set of claims in the amount of $211,254.41.
I will move to pay the approved claims in the amount of $211,254.41.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded to approve claims and set them out. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
We'll move on to our 10-15 fiscal year 20 county budget PILT allocations, personnel, special request, cash reserves. Debbie? There are copies of this PILT worksheet here if anyone wants one.
Thank you.
There is no more.
So I guess one of the questions that we had from the last meeting, Debbie, was the first line on there, the economic development, MBAC, all that membership. Is that a duplicate of the one that's down in the lower right hand?
No, this lower right hand
Yeah,
is just for the proceeds from the Wheatland turn lanes.
right,
So it will be reflected up here, but PILT, the proceeds were put into PILT. So this is to track how much of those dues, membership fees, that the turn lanes proceeds covered
okay,
last year.
okay. I don't know, I guess,
So-
didn't we discuss that we were gonna pay for that out of the turn lane fund?
That's why, Laura had requested that there be some sort of way to track it.
Right,
And so that's why this is on here, is a all-in-one at a snapshot, so we
Gotcha.
can track it.
all right, so that's the.
So this will be for this year, so
Yeah.
when you approve it, some of the proceeds that are still out in PILT will come from those proceeds to cover that.
Gotcha, okay, all right, good enough. I just wanna make sure we had it in two different places.
Yeah, no, it's so that we can verify that it's paid for the economic development, which is what the turn lanes were as a result of. Because it had come out from there, so it's going back in. So it's not going for CASA advocates, for example.
Right.
It's going straight to the economic types of things that it was designed to cover.
Gotcha. Okay. I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about was our public safety vehicle CIP. So we only have 20,000 there. I know that we committed to, because we asked them to balance their budget, we took that money they had in there for their vehicles out of that budget. And we committed to help them through the PILT process, is that right? So, Brandon, you can kind of jump in when you want. So I guess that the information I have is 39,522, that's the fleet price for each new vehicle?
Yeah,
All right. And you're asking for 2, is that correct?
2. We do have a department, DES, would like to purchase one of our ones we're gonna be rotating out.
Right.
And we can leave that partially set up for him, so he's not providing us, scenes with no lighting equipment or anything like that. And I think he roughly has 6,000 that he's going to spend.
I agree with increasing that CIP. However, I do think it needs to be, just like with our other departments, CIP where we build it over the years, so that there's always something in there we can build on, rather than, this year we need this much, this year we need this much. The other comment I would have on that is, since we are purchasing those vehicles through the CIP program, I would like to see, not a purchase for the cycled out vehicles, but more what was done last year with extension. A cycled out vehicle then goes to the rest of the county that doesn't need to have the more newer equipment with no miles.
Anybody expressed another need that you know of, Brandon, for the other vehicle at this time?
Well, we have the need for our detention transport because we
Okay.
rotated out that one vehicle, so that's where the other one would go.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
I do agree that something needs to be, some sort of plan needs to go in to build on that CIP. Unfortunately, buying one vehicle over the last few years has put us behind, and I guess unless you wanna put more money in there now, that wouldn't be spent, that's your guys' decision. But it does need, somehow we need to figure out a replacement plan and funding that builds on that.
Right. So if you were to purchase these vehicles this year, you wouldn't have to purchase any for,
Next year, we would need to again.
or you would? So that's the cycle you're in right now?
It's about 2 every year, because of the miles that we're putting on them, roughly 30,000 miles, some higher than that a year, some lower. But this year I need 3 vehicles, I'm asking for 2, understanding that we think we can get by for another year. But that's kind of where it's at. I don't know any other rotation that we can do outside of what we're doing with, we need roughly 2 vehicles every year.
Right. Well, I know we discussed the leasing option. And I know, I'm not quite sure if that's the direction we should go to.
Yeah, I just don't, because we pay for our vehicles out of PILT, it seems to be the question of what's PILT gonna be every year, and then what, it does get used for a lot of things. If it were to ever not come in, and then we would have this payment for a fleet,
Right.
well, that payment has to be made, and if our whole fleet was on that payment, we'd be looking at $100,000 a year, and I don't know, that payment's gotta be made, so it'd have to come out of our budget, which would just kill the public safety budget.
I guess that's part of my concern as well, to make that commitment and have all that uncertainty. Now, did you say also that some of the outfitting for these vehicles, you were gonna use some other funds for that?
Yeah, I'll use the 438 Memorial Fund, and that'll be $20,000 of outfitting that has to be done. 11,000 each, so there's 22. I'm gonna go through that bid and see if we can take anything off to get it, down a little bit further, but police equipment is not cheap. The person that upfits our vehicles, we tried switching, 3 years ago, vendors, and we have had nothing but issues with that patrol car, with the wiring, fuses, grounds, all that stuff frying out, and had to have it redone, and we have no issues with the vendor that we use now. Everything seems to be, works great. We have an issue, they drive here from Livingston, they fix it. And
So building up their CIP, any thoughts on that, you guys?
I'll throw something out on the table for discussion.
Sure.
To what you had brought up, if we have the 43.8, $50,000 a year goes to public safety on top of the $2.1 million budget. So the 20,000 that we put into vehicles, that's also the city's paying for half of a vehicle every year, ideally a vehicle every other year. If we were to double that, so this, we're going to a total of 90 grand a year from PILT, just right off the top, for public safety, for law enforcement. If we did that, then we're essentially able to buy a vehicle and a half every year with the city. That leaves, and I think what we need more than anything is a plan. I don't think we can just throw money.
Right.
I think we've got to have a plan. So that gives the sheriff's office the opportunity to add to that if they want the 2 vehicles, and maybe the incentive to introduce a plan or put together a plan.
Right.
Those would be my suggestions. So I would suggest increasing that to 40,000 and keeping the 43.8 Memorial 50,000 intact. So a total of 90,000 from PILT.
that memorial fund is rolled into our budget. That's not on top of the 2.1. I don't think it's quite 2.1, but that's rolled into our budget. And we've been using that. You guys have gotten letters like the body cams, some extra trainings and things like that. So that's rolled into our existing budget with the email that is provided by you guys to be spent as the sheriff sees fit, which we greatly appreciate that account very much. It's helped us, you know, get some good equipment for the guys and gals over there, and pay for unforeseeable costs throughout the year.
It has been.
Which I will use, sorry Laura to interrupt you, which I was gonna use that to upfit these 2 new patrol cars.
It has been responsibly used overall, I would say. There's also another CIP,
That's what I was looking
and
for.
it is weapons and equipment. I forgot about that one. And currently, it looks like it has 9,500, is that correct, Debbie, from the, tax levy requirements report? And it is essentially just wrapped up into the budget, that is true.
Yeah, that's currently what's cash.
Okay. So that's another one that, is pretty strong right now, but we need a plan for
Yeah.
continuing that rather than, one day not having enough when it's needed. And on PILT, we've always said is not to help balance budgets. It is above and beyond the budgets themselves, and I think we need to keep that in mind as how we want to keep this, to a point. That's not, you know, you can't always, just keep it for capital, but I think, again, that 43.8's been used as it was intended for the most part. But the source of the money is PILT.
Brandon, is there any, can you get piggyback with the state as far as purchasing vehicles on an order or not? Does that do us any good, or?
That's what we're doing. We
What
go
you're
through the
doing,
same
okay.
people the state is for the Chevy. The Ford Explorer's changing models again, and they're right at the same price. This new Tahoe that we just got, that we ordered last year, seems to be a really great vehicle. Now has the 4-wheel drive police package, pursuit rated, the same as the Ford Explorer, so. That's the same thing we do, we shop around to the state contracts, and that's where the state gets their vehicles.
Okay.
I think it's Denny Menholt, out of Billings, has the state contract for Chevy the last 2 years.
So Debbie, on this, do you have the 100,000 that we set aside for the hospital last year for their HB unit, is that included in this?
not for this year as an expenditure, and it didn't get spent last year.
So, but it's still in this reserves?
So yes, it would
Or
be,
the-
because you
or the
didn't
cash
spend
balance.
it, yes, it would be in your cash balance.
Okay.
So last year's report, when you anticipated to spend it, but then didn't, it just left it in your cash carrying forward. So that's why at the end of the year, at June 30th, the balance of PILT was $958,000. Because we gotten the payment for the year and some of those unspent monies from the turn lanes, and you didn't spend the money on the hospital HVAC. Kept the balance higher than in years past. So that was a good thing. And at the time we were working on this, with all the expenditures, whether you pay directly out of PILT or the transfers to other funds, the amount requested was $590,000. And not knowing what our PILT allocation will be this next year, I erred low, and it's the lowest of 4 years at 628, which theoretically, if you stick to this, the end of the year balance will be 367,000 as your cash to carry forward into the new year.
Okay.
So
And
that's,
what we need to remember, correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, but anything that's unforeseen
correct.
or a capital expenditure opportunity that comes up, that's what we use PILT for. And one of the reasons we do have that 367 surplus of 392 is because we don't just spend it all at the beginning of the year. And I would like to continue that practice. It was one started by our predecessors, and I think it's sound accounting practice. It's not done by every county.
And this does include the veterans and indigent burials that are kind of waiting to be determined. We didn't have as many vet burials this year, so the cash balance is pretty good on those, which ties into the general fund. Indigent, we've only had the one, so that one, if you don't spend it, that leaves that much unspent in your balance. So juvenile transport, that was having to pay that on the caveat that when we get reimbursement, it will repay it and go back into PILT. Lynn said a week ago that Tam's sent the bill in, so it's just a matter of time for that to come in. We might not even need to do the transfer, it might come in before all this happens.
Right.
So there are little caveats in here also that could decrease what you spend. But these were the crests that came so far this year.
So Brandy, do you have any ideas of how we can start to contribute to a CIP for you guys?
I don't have any ideas other than to, I guess, put more money in than we need this year.
Right.
You know, ever since I've been here and before, it seems like the money that goes in is the money we need this year is spent.
Mhm.
And it's, so you know, I tried rolling it into our budget this year, and then I was told to take it out
Mhm.
and to go to PILT. And, you know, granted, it wasn't a balanced budget with it in there, but that was my attempt, was to somehow get these paid for every year, and so we know we're gonna need them. It's a pretty important part of our budget to keep our deputies and patrol vehicles that are safe and run good and know you're gonna get to the call. I have no other way in our budget, current budget, to pay for this.
Yeah.
Or to build the CIP up.
Well, I guess, one way to do it, and it's not a great way to do it, but it's a way to start getting on track, is you have them to possibly change your vehicle rotation schedule. You guys have to hold on to these vehicles a little bit longer than what you have been in the past. And I realize you run into other issues, maintenance costs and things go up, stuff like that, but it's just like we do in our own private lives, right? We need something to kind of save up for it.
And
So,
the past 2 years, we have been doing that.
Mhm.
We have 3 vehicles that we've held on a year longer than we normally have. So, those have been being done already.
right.
Things are breaking on them, they're constantly in the shop now, and it's just,
I understand that.
and the issue with the vehicle being in the shop is you're hot seating another car and gonna add miles onto that, so to me, it's you pay for now or you pay for it later, and that's just the way it goes. I've sat and thought the same as you're thinking now, on what can we do different? Can we run more miles on these cars? But it seems when we're hitting 100,000 miles, they're starting to have a lot of issues. Granted, they probably have 200,000 miles of runtime on them if you add that up. Just burning out. But one Durango, we was still doing okay for extension. The other one had the same miles, it blew the motor. It wasn't even worth fixing after that.
Debbie, you seen anything as you look at it, that we can help them out?
And like Brandon, we've looked, scrimped. I don't have any ideas. I know the lease option is out there. 1 vehicle year lease, compromise. I just don't know.
Is that an option, Brandon, doing partial fleet lease?
I think
Is that something you want?
we can do the fleet option. I mean, they'll, I could walk in and ask for no money this year and get the 3 cars. But we have to have a 5-year commitment plan.
Right.
I could get 3 cars, but then I still need money coming in for these other ones that come up in the rotation.
Right.
But I could get some revenue, I mean, to pay for 3 cars this year, and we would ask for 0 from Bilt. But the next year, what do you do when you need the 2 more cars, and then the next year after that? That's where I just don't, without something set in stone, I do not wanna get tied up into that. It just,
Well, you're right, and that's where it would take that commitment to have that money there every year, because it just becomes a cost of doing business.
Right now, what's the cost of 2 cars?
2 cars is, well, they're $39,000 for the vehicle, and then there's another, $11,000 in upfitting that has to be done, and that's not counting all the equipment that goes in those cars. That's transferring a lot of the equipment from the old cars into these cars. So 39 plus 11 is what I'm looking at this year, and then times that by 2. But what you need to know is that there's the cost of the car, and then there's another $25,000 to $30,000 worth of equipment in each vehicle. It's not cheap. And they have to have those things in there.
You already own most of that $25,000 worth of equipment. How
Um,
often do you have to update that?
Well, we're getting pretty close to where we're gonna have to start updating our camera system. There's a lot better systems out there, but we're getting by, they work. We're staying with it. I mean, it's not, but in the next few years, you're probably gonna have to look at updating the system. I've already had complaints from the county attorney that the nighttime vision, it's not night vision, but it switches to where it sees better at night, is not as good as like the Montana Highway Patrol's before he goes to court. There's a lot of stuff you can't see. I mean, but what we got, and we're gonna stick with it. It's not a terrible system, they are good, but there are way better models out there.
So I, you know, I mean, I know that we're anticipating our allocations, you know, to be a little bit higher than they have been in the past. Would you guys commit to a portion of that going into CIP?
Portion over what we budgeted for. I'll commit to all of whatever comes in over what we budgeted for to go into the CIP. That's part of, you know, our plan of, that I presented earlier this year of trying to run a year behind.
Right.
So we don't have to sit here and, you know, submit 5 different budgets before it gets okayed.
And I actually think that we're to a point where we can do that, based on how Debbie worked it this year. So, is this something we want to talk about a little bit later then? After we kind of see how things come in?
That would be fine. Do you want to take that up though to 40 for now?
Well, we need to do, let's see. Well, 40 only gets them one vehicle, right?
Yeah.
But it's a start.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually move that we increase the public safety vehicle CIP to double to $40,000. Sorry, Ann.
It'll dry.
It will dry. I don't think we have tissues anywhere. Thanks.
I'll second. Motion to increase the public safety vehicle CIP to $40,000. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Okay.
Yes.
There's a discussion on here. So, you know, I appreciate that, but it doesn't get us to where we need. But I sit in these meetings and I listen to when solid waste had their issue of being 300,000 in the hole. And the last meeting was, we're gonna commit 300,000 of PIL.
Thank you.
But that's what was said,
No.
pending their loan, and I see now that that's gone. So, when it comes to the sheriff's office, why, we know we have this need. I'm telling you that we absolutely need this. Why can't we have a commitment of 80 and then to go from there? I don't know why we don't ever get that commitment. And that'd be my discussion.
Well, I agree, Brandon, I think that we need to make that commitment. And we all know that this isn't a finalized document, but I think we need to at least make that commitment at this time.
And the other issue that we're running into is to order the 20s, the deadline is coming up in August.
Mm-hmm.
Then I have to start looking at the 20, which there's gonna be a whole other, or 21, a whole other year gap. and that's what I'm asking for.
So is this 367, does that include that was giving the 301 to solid waste or not giving
No.
the 301? Not
No.
giving the 301.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, I think we're setting really pretty good with our, in our pill requests. I don't, to, go to 80 on this, I think is the thing to do for right now. It changes it by $60,000, there's already 20,000 in there. So it just changes it by $60,000.
I'm just asking for a plan. Mr. Chairman, I would call for the question.
To double to 40? We call for the question to double to 40. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. The motion fails. So there's a motion to increase it to 80, to increase it by 60,000 to 80.
Let me ask one question before there. So my second motion was going to be to increase the public safety weapons and equipment by another 10. They have 9,500 right now. So that would start helping to pay for the equipping of the vehicles, approximately $11,000 per vehicle. So if you want to go to 80, that would be your motion. But I would suggest that we're smarter to put some with equipment, some with CIP, marry it with the city, and ask for a plan from public safety. But that's, just putting that out there so that you guys
Well,
have that information.
Yeah, and I agree, we need to have a plan, and I think that we can work on that, and go ahead, Brennan, and I know you had an idea on some other equipment funding, right? Were you gonna use something from the city or something like that?
To equip the vehicles
Yeah.
was I was gonna use the 438 memorial account,
Okay.
which I
Okay.
budgeted for
Okay,
that.
there you go.
But my question on the equipment account that Commissioner Overt's referring to, to my knowledge, that's a firearm CIP, not equipment. And that's why that money has been built up and not been spent. And we've gotten new firearms, we're good, that's set, but I believe that that's only a firearm CIP account, to my knowledge.
Is that true, Debbie?
That's my understanding. The equipment is for any carriers or things that the weapons need to be
Okay.
used with it. It was my understanding. That was set up way before I ever started. That was my understanding.
So Debbie, with the law addressing CIPs, would that not allow any of that money to be used on related equipment in vehicles?
If they've generalized them, so there's a little more leniency, then yes, that would be correct.
Okay.
I know they used to be more restrictive.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think, we've got a commitment from Brandon to, if there is, because our evaluations come in, and he said he'd be willing to put that towards creating a CIP. I think that's a start. I think that's a place to start. And it just seems like we've got a place to start someplace, so. I guess that would be my motion. Increase it to 60,000 with the thought that we would be working on his plan in the future.
Is that increase to 60 or
No,
by
they
60?
increase it by 60,000, so that there's a total of 80,000 in that fund, or in that line item.
I will second the motion.
Motion's been made and seconded to increase the public safety vehicle CIP to $80,000. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same?
No, and my dissenting comment is, I think it's too high a jump without a plan. I appreciate the commitment.
Thank you.
With that in mind, I do think it's important to continue building the sheriff's weapons and equipment. Perhaps we can come back and revisit that at another time.
Okay.
I don't want to get back to a place where I think we should continue building little by little like we do with the ambulance, like we do with the airport, rather than getting into, I need everything now. So that would be my thought on that, but I'm fine waiting.
So Brandon, if you're looking at this, replacing these equipment in these cars, when is that gonna, you got 2 years, you got 3 years, you got?
I'd say within probably 3 to 4, we can probably get by. Outside of buying a camera, a radar here and there, which, you know, we purchased a new one last year and a new radar for the vehicle that we were getting, because our plan changed with our detective position to keep that car fully equipped, and then equip this new car. So we use our detective on the road now, making that Three Forks deputy, basically filling our detective spot. So I mean, I would say probably 4 years to get by.
Is that car that you have down in the south end, is that gonna be,
This,
less mileage than our other cars, or is it gonna still be the same amount?
it'll probably be the same amount.
Okay. What have we been putting into weapons? Have we been putting anything into that CIP, or is that just?
Been a couple years. Back when they had to get all new handguns, something with the model changing.
We replaced our handguns 2 years ago, and the total cost was, to the county, after trading in all of our guns, we had some old firearms in the back, shotguns that we traded in. I think the total bill was like roughly $800-900. And that got all new handguns, because we switched from the .357 SIGs to the .40 calibers to save costs on ammo, and we cut our ammo cost in half doing that. The SIGs are so expensive. So they have new, our rifles are all good, the shotguns are good. We just purchased 3 different caliber rifles last year. Our budget, not that CIP. And all of our handguns are new, and we even have one spare handgun at the moment for if there's ever an incident and we need to take a gun, we can hand another one out. But I can't foresee, you know, spending a whole, with the condition that our weapons are in and that we're keeping them in, the trade